This is Josh White with JW Math Tutoring. Today's video is going to go through a digital SAT Math 4-month study plan. And this was the exact plan that was used to help a student increase the SAT Math score from 500 to 720. So let's go ahead and take a look.
But life is a dream that calculus could never predict.
We've been looking for a digital SAT Math 3 to 4 month study plan or outline or guide to use, then this is the perfect video for you. So what you see on the screen here, and which will be available as a PDF file in the description of the video below, is basically the exact outline that I used with a student of mine that I prepped in this spring 2024, the US, for the digital SAT, specifically, for the math section. So technically there were more than 15 sessions because there were some like extra like 30-minute sessions and stuff built in, but pretty much these 15 weeks correspond to about 15 sessions, and these are the exact things that I went through with this student. Okay, so this student started off, had a PSAT math score of 500 from October 2023, and that PSAT was digital. That was the first time the PSAT was given as a digital exam. And then basically went through and got a 600 on an April school day test. And you'll see that was basically after 8 sessions, according to the outline here. And then also took the test again in May and increased the score to a 720. So 120-point increase from the April school day test, 220-point increase from the PSAT, kind of like baseline test, which is just tremendous. Tremendous improvement. Student also took the test again in June. I have not gotten the score back yet from the student, so I don't know, what the student did between May and June. But this will show you exactly like what we did, essentially what we did each week. Obviously, this was done during the school year, so this student, had classes and sports and all kinds of other stuff going on. So keep in mind, if you're taking this during the summer, taking the SAT, say like in August, or start preparing during the summer, then you obviously can like shorten this. You can combine 2 weeks on this chart into one actual calendar week. If you want to complete this outline in 2 months instead of 4 months, to prepare, let's say, for the August test, which is about 2 months away from where we are right now at the end of June. All right. One other thing just before I get started, I'll mention this as I go through it too, but obviously you can complete the practice test in a different order. I kind of held back on the practice test because I knew the student would be taking the SAT 3 separate times, so I didn't want to burn all the tests before the first or even the second time. But if you are only going to be taking the essay maybe twice or even just this once, preparing for, obviously you can shift the order of the practice tests, that you take and move them around based on the schedule. You do not need to follow the exact same order in terms of the practice tests that we're taking in. So basically on the screen here, I've got the weeks, obviously far left column, middle column, these are the actions that were done, and then materials and links and everything are on the right. Links will of course be in the PDF files. So I'm not going to read through this week by week. That would just, take way too long. But I'm just going to highlight some things, basically highlight a couple things. So first of all, everything that's highlighted in yellow, so that was done in a tutoring session. Okay, so that was done like in that week's tutoring session with me. Whereas if you're doing self-study for this, you would need to obviously do those things on your own. And some of those will be relatively easy, but some might be more difficult, including, things like where I say, go over the incorrect answers on, say, the PSAT, 10 practice test, or go over the incorrect answers on Bluebook practice test 2. Okay, obviously they have the answers on the College Board website, but a lot of those answers are garbage. They are junk. They are not easy to understand, they are not easy to follow, and they are not the quickest and easiest method to solve the problems. There are so many other ways you can solve a lot of these problems that are so much quicker and easier, especially with the Desmos calculator. Okay, like almost none of their explanations talk about Desmos or using the graphing calculator. So that's something where you're going to have to find better explanations. YouTube is a great resource, or obviously the SAT subreddit is another great resource. But that's something to keep in mind. For any of these, whether it's the Blue Book tests or the linear, paper practice tests as well. So, I mean, you can basically see here all the white things, then the non-highlighted things. That was work that the student did outside of our sessions, basically between sessions. Like that, in other words, that was the homework essentially for the next session. And then the things highlighted in yellow are what we went over in the session, what we talked about. So you can see at the beginning, basically, it was, going over things like reviewing some basic math formulas. I talked about strategies. I also spent, you can see multiple sessions going over the Desmos calculator and all the different kinds of problems you can solve and things you can do with that. So that took, I mean, basically up to, the first four, maybe five sessions, in addition to going over the first practice test. Then after that is when I mainly started to get into the actual content. So, I mean, I should actually say, there was some content initially because, I started introducing the College Board Skills Insight tool problems, here with algebra, here with problem solving and data analysis, here with geometry and trig, and also actually way up here too in advanced math. So I did introduce some skills, some topic, content as well during the first, 4 or 5 sessions, but it was mostly kind of like what I would call background information and the Desmos calculator practice. By the way, you can get those on the SAT website. The links over will be in the video, or you can also click the other link if you want to get PDF files and just practice off of those. So then, we start getting into Blue Book practice tests and completing those. And in addition to that, doing the unique questions on the linear paper tests. So just if you're not aware, so you have the Blue Book practice tests. There's currently 6 of them in the Blue Book app, but then there are also 6 linear non-adaptive paper tests. But the problem is most of the questions on the paper tests are also in the Blue Book tests. Okay, there are some unique questions. It's like about 40% or a little bit less than that for the math sections that are unique on the linear tests, meaning they do not repeat, they do not appear in the Blue Book tests, but about the opposite of that, 60%, a little over, are repeat, problems that you will see on the Blue Book tests if and when you take them. So keep in mind there are PDF files, that I made, and there's a link here, which will take you to, which will show you which questions in the linear tests are unique, i.e., which ones do you want to do that are not on the Blue Book tests. Okay, so make sure you do that. Make sure you check out, that link so you know which ones to do. Um, and then a couple other things to keep in mind too. So you don't see as you go through this a lot of what I would call topic practice or like content specific practice. I mean, there was some in terms of me giving, like extra worksheets or, those kind of things. But the reason is because in the session, say when we would go over a problem, whether it's from the Skills Insight tool or whether it's from a practice test or whether it's from, the Blue Book practice test or a linear test or whatever, so after we go over the problem, a lot of times I would ask the student another question about the problem. Or I might ask the student, okay, let's say everything about this problem was the same, except I changed this value to negative, or I changed this 5 to a 10, or I changed this to this. Or instead of being no solution, I wanted it to be infinite solutions. Then what would the answer be? Or what would change? Or what would you do differently? So a lot of the kind of like content and topic practice, came during the sessions in the form of that. Now, whereas if you're self-studying on your own, of course, you would probably need to, this is where you would need to find additional problems to complete. If there's a content or a skill that you missed a question on or weren't sure on, or didn't understand fully. So just keep that in mind, as you're looking at this outline and say, like, working through these problems. So we had met, like a total of 8 times before the school day test. Okay. And up to that point, basically had done all the skills insight problems. By the way, it's just starting over here, starting up here, 500, October 2023 PSAT. Again, we met 8 times leading up to the school day test at the start of April, and by that point, the student had completed 2 of the practice tests, basically 2 and 4. The unique questions from basically linear test 1 and 2 and 3. I mean, we technically didn't go over the answers to 2 and 3 until after the next session after the school day test, but had completed the unique questions from linear test 1, 2, and 3. Um, and also all of the skills insight tool practice problems. So there's 14 of them times the 4 domain areas. So that's 56 total problems from there as well. Okay. Then, obviously continued prepping. The May test was about like 3 weeks after, 3.5 weeks after the school day test. So again, this is the one that was a 600. And we just, continued going through more, going over the, linear test, do another practice test, also more linear test, unique questions here you can see. So at this point, had basically gone through the unique questions on the first 4 linear paper tests, had completed and gone over 3 practice tests, technically had taken and completed the another one, the fourth practice test. But again, we didn't actually go over it or discuss it really until after that May test. And again, this is the one that ended up being a 720. And then from then until the June test, it's basically exactly a month. And that's when we just continued kind of doing the same thing in that, went over like the fourth practice test, which was number 5, then went over another practice test, basically number 6. So at this point, heading into June, the student had done 5 of the 6 practice tests, basically number 3. I held back on, didn't assign. Also had done the unique questions from all 6 of the linear paper tests. Okay, so we went over all those. It's like 100 and I forget what I added it up before. It's like 117, I think, unique total questions. Um, it's basically almost the equivalent of like it's just under like 3 full exams. And in addition to that, I grabbed some questions, from Reddit, from the discussion threads from both the May, 2024 test, the one that the student took, and also from the March test as well. So I just grabbed, common questions and went over those, showed those to the student in our sessions, because what we're seeing from the digital SAT is a lot of times they will repeat common question types. They'll change the numbers, they'll change the values, but they'll repeat things. And then 15, the last session here is basically just kind of like a review, or a wrap up session where, just reviewing some common things that we've talked about previously, but maybe haven't talked about in the last, couple weeks or so, in the math formulas, the Desmos operations, some common problem types, going over both how to solve them by hand and by Desmos. So this is the outline that I used for a student that I worked with preparing for basically, an April school day test, then the May, Saturday test, and then also again the June Saturday test. So total prep, you can see it's 15 weeks, essentially just under 4 months. But the significant improvement, again, 500 to 720, was seen in just uh, basically just 11 weeks here. So essentially just, just under 3 months. But there still, of course, was some improvement, significant improvement, 100 points, even from the PSAT to the first test here, which was, basically 8 weeks, just under 2 months. So this is an outline, a guideline, basically, for you to use if you are unsure exactly, how to study. I mean, what to study, what do I do? And again, couple things. You can do the test in a different order. That's completely, understandable, acceptable. Um, and also, you can combine these weeks or whatever as you see fit. So again, this whole thing is basically just under 4 months. So if you want to do this in 2 months, you just combine every 2 weeks into one. If you wanted to do this in less time, like if you wanted to take this 15 weeks down to, whatever, 5 weeks, you would basically combine every 3 weeks, on here kind of into 1 week. And that, could be possible, like I said, during summer because you might have a lot more free time. So, have any questions or comments on this, please do leave them below. If you like this video, of course, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and sign up for notifications. But again, I hope you like this video. Look out for my other videos, of course, giving answers to the Blue Book practice tests, Desmos hacks, and other SAT math related content.